Ferreira. I'm an advisor at EducationUSA PUC, Rio de Janeiro. It's a pleasure to have you all here tonight. And we are going to have not a webinar, but a workshop on SAT. And Noelani Bernal, she's going to introduce herself, is a senior student at the University of Chicago, and she's the person who is going to share with you her expertise on the SAT. So, Noelani, would you like to present yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Simone. Like Simone just said, my name is Noelani Bernal. I'm going to be starting my senior year at the University of Chicago in the next few months. And today we're going to go over just one section of the SAT. I broke it down so that we have a little bit of time to spend on every section a little bit more thoroughly. And so these are, I'm going to share with you guys some tips that helped me when I went through it, because it might seem like an easy test at first, but timing is always the worst part, at least in my experience. So we're going to go over some tips in the beginning, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to give a mini practice test that is modified to be able to fit into our section today. So just to be clear, this is I'm going to be nicer to you guys than on the day of the real test. I'm going to give you a little bit more time and less questions to be able to fill everything out. And then the remainder of the time for today, we're going to spend going over the questions that you might have missed. And so that will be the structure for the main 4 sections, the math and the reading, and then the subsections between those. And then the last week we'll be going over the writing portion, and that will take 2 days as well.
Thank you, Noelani. So I'm going to switch to português. Então, gente, muito prazer. É um prazer ter vocês aqui com a gente hoje. Então, nós estamos começando hoje a primeira session do nosso workshop de SAT. Noelani se apresentou, me apresentei. Eu queria falar para vocês que o EducationUSA é a fonte oficial de informações sobre estudos nos Estados Unidos. Nós somos um órgão ligado ao Departamento do Estado americano que orienta pessoas que querem fazer graduação, mestrado, doutorado nos Estados Unidos. A nossa missão, o nosso trabalho é orientar alunos mundo afora. Nós temos mais de 450 centros de EducationUSA pelo mundo. No Brasil, somente no Brasil, a gente tem 40 centros, e no Rio de Janeiro, onde eu trabalho, nós temos 2 centros. Então, esse é o nosso trabalho, orientar pessoas, mostrar como fazer a candidatura. Dentro da metodologia dos 5 Steps do EducationUSA, a gente mostra para você todas as etapas que você precisa passar para fazer uma boa candidatura. A gente quer que, brinca que fala que seu sucesso é o nosso sucesso, ou seja, a gente quer que você seja aceito em universidades americanas e que você vai estudar em uma universidade que seja um bom fit, o best fit para você. Então, esse é o nosso trabalho. Dentro de tudo que você precisa fazer para poder fazer uma candidatura, você precisa fazer algumas provas, né? Então, dentre essas provas, você sabe, você precisa fazer o TOEFL, ou o IELTS, ou o Duolingo, e no caso das outras provas, essas provas que eu falei são as provas que medem a proficiência na língua inglesa, as outras provas são o SAT ou o ACT. Então, o nosso objetivo é falar do ACT, do SAT, e a Noelani vai começar a trabalhar com vocês. Então, a gente dividiu isso, são 6 dias, né, Noelani? 6 dias, certo? 6 different days, right? 6 dias, então a gente tem hoje, depois quinta-feira, certo? Depois semana que vem também, não, peraí, desculpa, hoje é terça, não, tá certo. É hoje e, deixa eu até abrir a agenda aqui, hoje, dia 21, dia 23, semana que vem novamente, no dia 28 e no dia 30, e depois na primeira semana de agosto, no dia 4 e no dia 6. Então, a gente vai sempre fazer esses encontros por esse link. A Noelani é a pessoa que tem expertise e que vai trabalhar com vocês, tá bom? Caso vocês tenham dúvidas, Noelani, I think it's important to tell them how we want to work with them in terms of questions, if they have questions, what they should do. Okay, I'm going to mute my mic and I'm going to leave the room in a few minutes. But if you need me, just text me and I'll be back.
Sure,
okay?
Thank you.
Nice to meet you, everyone, and have fun. Bye-bye.
Okay, so just to answer Simone's great question about how we're going to go over everything at the end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, I really want this to be like test day. I mean, obviously it's not going to be, you have a little bit more freedom right now, but I want you to get the feel of having a timed test, having to get through the questions quickly before the time runs out. So what I'm going to do is I have just a heads up. It will, if you are the kind of person that needs to write down answers, maybe have a piece of paper and a pen in hand nearby. I'm going to share with you all a link to the practice tests that I'm going to be giving out after I go over a few tips on how to make sure that you finish the section in time. So it's a PDF. The link is to a drive, the Google Drive. The best thing to do, I think, would be to download the PDF on your computer so you can have it open and not worry about it, the Wi-Fi glitching or anything like that. And then to mark your answers somewhere, type it on your computer. They're multiple choice. And so just make sure that you are able to follow along how you're answering the questions. It's a little bit more difficult because this test is typically taken in person. So that's the way we're going to do it. After the mini test that I'm going to give, I know this might be the first time you guys are even introduced to the SAT, so it might be a little daunting, but that is okay. The whole point is to just try your best and to see at the end what, or we're going to reflect like what you found you were surprised by. Maybe it was easier than you expected. Maybe there were some questions you weren't expecting. So we're going to do that at the end. I will go through the answers with you, and then we will debrief and go over any of the questions that you get wrong. So if you have any questions during the test, it is pretty straightforward. Just do your best. You can message me on the side, and I will decide whether or not it'll be best to answer you. But on test day, there might be a word you don't know. So I think that those kinds of problems are going to be, this would be a really good opportunity to practice those kinds of problems that you may come across on test day. So I'm going to share my screen and just go over a few tips. Oh, nope. One second, I had the wrong one pulled up. Let's see. Okay, and then just as a heads up, today we are going over the writing and the language section of the SAT. I will explain to you in a second how it is organized so that you have so that makes better sense. Okay, here we go. Now we have the correct info. Okay, just waiting for that to load. Okay, so today, or let me just go over the breakdown of the SAT. This is what it looks like. You're going to get a reading test. I know that there looks like there are a bunch of sections, but your reading and the reading test and the writing and language test, that's the section number 2 that we're going to focus on today. Those are going to be part of the same score. And then the mathematics with the calculator and without the calculator, that's going to be the second component of your score. The optional essay is going to be the third component of your score. But of course, since it's optional, you're not expected to take it. So this is just an overview of how long you're going to be given for each section and how many questions you're going to be expected to complete. So this is what we're going to do today. So today, again, like I said, I'm going to be nicer to you guys. So normally on test day, the section would be 35 minutes long with 44 questions, and you were given 4 passages to answer the questions next to it. Today, however, I'm going to give you 33 minutes to finish 33 questions. So obviously try to budget around a minute per question. And then I'm only going to give you 3 passages. So basically almost the same amount of time, but one less passage than you would get on test day. And then to answer the question that just came up, you'll be able to access the recording later. Yes, it'll be uploaded to the, I believe, the YouTube channel for Education USA Rio. Okay, so let's go over some helpful tips. Answer the questions as you read. With this section in particular, the reading and the writing and the language section, you don't necessarily have to understand the entire text to get the right answer. So this is where your pen and paper are going to come in handy, unless you have the software to kind of edit the PDF on your computer. Use the scratch paper to think out loud, just to organize your thoughts a little bit. That's totally okay, because that's what you would have on test day. You're allowed to mark it up with your pencil. Save longer and harder questions for the end. None of the questions all are worth the same. And so obviously, if you're spending too much time on one, you don't want to run out of time and then find out later that you could have answered a bunch of easy ones to make up for that one that you struggled with. The answer will always be concise and relevant to the text. This is super important, especially if you're running out of time. If you cannot find evidence in the text to support your answer choice, then it is not the right answer choice. For this section in particular, punctuation rules are important. They will ask you to pick the choice with the correct grammar, for example. So brush up on those beforehand. This is a really good way to practice. Look for how the ideas connect. And so look for transition words in the paragraph. Maybe it'll ask you later to identify the transition word and suggest or choose the answer choice that has a better transition word. So just make sure that throughout the text, you're noting which parts are cohesive and which ones make sense and whether it's organized in a logical way. This one is super, super key. You need to answer every single question because since the SAT changed a few years ago, you will not be penalized for just guessing. So if you don't know what the right answer is, put something down. It's so much more worth it just trying to get the right answer than leaving it blank, because obviously there's no way you're going to get it right if you leave it blank. Use the process of elimination. You will have 4 answer choices per question. Some will sound absolutely ridiculous. Immediately cross those out and move on. And then for today, obviously, because I'm giving you 33 minutes for 33 questions, that's around a minute per question. I'm going to put a timer up for you guys to be able to track your time. I hope that's not too scary. I personally don't like watching the time just fly by, but I think it's important for you to be able to pace yourself a little bit more. So those are my main tips. I think it's lagging, but that's okay. Those are my main tips for being able to finish this section, particularly with, or the quickest that you can and the most accurately that you can. So does anyone have any questions about what the test will look like? Anything before I start sending out the materials and set a timer? You can drop it in the chat. You can unmute your microphone. I'll just give you a minute to collect your thoughts if you have any. Okay, cool. No one's got any questions? Awesome. So how do I exit out of this? I'm going to send the practice test in the chat. Let me know if this is not opening for you. It should. And then I will set the timer, so just make sure it downloads. And then once I get the okay from everyone that it's smooth, then I will set the timer and then you guys can start the class. Okay, let me know if anyone has any problems with downloading this or accessing the drive. If everything is working out, can you just drop something in the chat so I can kind of, okay, awesome, thank you. Yay, I'm glad it's working. I was nervous. Okay, great. So it looks like it's working for a good number of people. Does anyone need more time to kind of figure it out? Or does anyone have any last minute questions before we start this? Going once, going twice. Okay, cool. It is so much harder to be able to tell when you can't see anyone's face. The first time I'm doing this virtually, so it's a learning process for me too. Okay, so let me get this started so that we have a ton of time after to go over questions. Again, you have 33 minutes. And good luck. Oh, is this working? You're just over halfway through. You have a little bit more than 15 minutes to go. You've got a minute left, so if you skipped any answers, now is the time to go back and start filling them randomly. Don't leave any blank. Okay, time's up. Put your pencils and pens down. Okay. How do you guys feel about that? Did any impressions? Was it harder than you anticipated? Easier? You can type it if I'm too scary and you don't want to unmute yourselves. I just want to get an idea. Was this your first time taking it or a practice exam of any kind? No one's got anything to say? Are you sure? Okay, better than the actual. Cool, cool. So are these first impressions? Has anyone taken it before? Okay. Ah, you already took this test? Dang it. Okay, great. Okay, what about the time? Did you guys feel like this was a good amount of time? Did you feel like you were still running out, even though I did give you a little bit more time per question? Maybe it was the perfect amount of time. You feel like you could get more in. Okay, time is good. Okay, cool. So no one felt rushed overall, or maybe this was a good tester. So yeah, so again, on the real test, you'll get around, I think it's 44 questions. So basically what you just had, but another passage, and you only get another 10 minutes or 11 minutes to do all that. So these are good things to keep in mind for when you're practicing at home. Just obviously because some of the portions, the test sections are longer than others. We can't do it all in one sitting. But yeah, if this is your first time taking it, great job, everyone. If you didn't finish or if you felt like it was more difficult than you expected, that's okay. It is so much better to discover that now than on test day. So we're going to make some progress. Yeah, so let's go over the answers. I'm just going to read them out. At the end, if you want me to repeat any of the ones that I just went through, then we can repeat. But just drop it in the chat or something like that if you need me to repeat a certain number. Feel free. I'm sure you won't be the only one that'll miss some if that's the case. Okay, so question number 1 is D. Question 2 is B. 3, A. 4, C. 5, C. 6, D. 7, B. 8, C. 9, A. 10, A. 11, B. 12, B. 13, A. 14, B. 15, C. 16, C, 17, C, 18, A, 19, D, 20, D, 21, B, 22, D, 23, D, 24, D, 25, B, 26, A, 27, B, 28, C, 29, B, 30, D, 31, C, 32, A, and 33, A. Okay, let me know if you need me to repeat any of them, and then go ahead and add up your score. Number 14, sure. Let me scroll back. 14 is B, as in boy. Number 1 is D, as in dog. 19. 19 is D, as in dog. Any other ones, or anyone needing a few more seconds to add up what they got? Okay, cool. So what did you guys think? Oh, 10? Okay. Give you a few more seconds. 10 is A. Sure. So did you guys do better than you thought? Worse than you thought? Might need a little bit more practice. 2, 3. Okay. Better? That's good. Okay, give me a sec. I'll go. Okay, that's great. Great. 2, 3, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay. 2 is B as in boy. 3 is A. The other ones, 12, 13, 14, 15. 12 is B as in boy. 13 is A. 14 is B as in boy. And 15 is C. Great. Okay. So maybe I gave you guys a little bit too much time. I should have cut it down a little bit to make it harder. But great. I mean, that's awesome. You guys should be super stoked with your scores. Any last minute? Actually, we're gonna go into going over the answers. So I'm gonna go through pretty much the whole test at an accelerated rate. So feel free, because I can't see you guys in person, I can't really tell how many of you guys switched, or how many of you guys missed certain problems. So what I will do is I will start, I'll start calling out the problems. I'm going to pull it up on my screen here and share it. And then you guys can tell me in the chat or unmute your microphones and let me know if you need to explain the answer a little bit more, okay? So let's try this again. Oh, it's a little small. Okay, I know it's a little small, but since you guys all have the PDF on your computers or laptops or whatever you have, hopefully you can see it from there. Let me know. I'm still learning how to use this thing, and so I will have to learn how to make it bigger. But okay, so it's just lagging for a sec. we have any questions on 1 through 5? Any that, can I send the link again? Sure, so I will send you the link to the drive. And then obviously I didn't mark the answers on the drive. The answers are highlighted on my own PDF. Okay, anyone need help with 1 through 5 at all? 2 and 5, okay, great. How about 1, 3, and 4? Anyone need a little bit more explanation? Don't be afraid. You probably were not the only one that needed help on the questions. Be brave. Okay, I'll go through 2 and 5. Let me know if you need me to go through the other ones. So 2, it says, which choice provides the most relevant detail? As you can see, the numbers in the actual text correspond with the question that you need to refer back to. So let's see. The underlined portion under number 2 is they can add it to livestock feed as a protein supplement, and people can make their own Greek-style yogurt at home by straining regular yogurt. Well, it's asking what the most relevant detail will be in that underlined portion, but let's look at what the entire paragraph is about, because having loose details, again, SAT is very focused on making things concise and getting rid of extra information that is not relevant or you don't need. So let's just go through what the paragraph is about. So the first sentence, the main environmental problem caused by the production of Greek yogurt is the creation of acid whey as a byproduct. So from the first sentence, we know it's going to have something to do with an environmental environmental problem. And if we just kind of keep going, because it requires up to 4 times more milk to make than conventional yogurt does, Greek yogurt produces larger amounts of acid whey, which is difficult to dispose of. To address the problem of disposal, farmers have found a number of uses for acid whey. Okay, so the next sentence, people can make their own Greek-style yogurt at home by straining regular yogurt, doesn't have much to do with the paragraph at all, right? So let's look at the answer choices and see what kind of answer might actually fit with the theme of the paragraph. And the correct answer is supplement and convert it into gas to use as fuel in electricity production. So let's look at the other choices. While sweet whey is more desirable as a food additive for humans, that doesn't really have anything to do with the environmental problem and how it can be converted into something better that gets rid of the environmental problem. Yes. And then the last possible answer, supplement, which provides an important element of their diet. So not really a detail that's relevant, again, to the actual paragraph, because it doesn't have to do with an environmental problem and turning it into something else. So that is why B is going to be the correct answer in this case, because it's the one that fits most with the theme of the paragraph. 5, to make this paragraph most logical, sentence 5 should be placed where after sentence 2? So let's look at sentence 2. You can kind of see, let me see if this works. You can kind of see sentence, oh, it's not really marking, that's okay. Sentence 2 is, oh, there it is, there's a lag. Is up there because it requires up to 4 times more milk to make than conventional yogurt does. Well, which one is sentence 5? If it is improperly introduced into the environment, acid whey runoff can pollute waterways, depleting the oxygen content of streams and rivers as it decomposes. So basically, if it's not taken care of properly, we're going to have problems because it's going to get into our water system and it's not going to be good for anyone. So the reason why it goes after 2 and not after any of the other sentences is because it flows the best. So after sentence 2 would be, because it requires up to 4 times more milk to make than conventional yogurt does, Greek yogurt produces larger amounts of acid whey, which is difficult to dispose of. And then we're going to jump to 5, if it is improperly introduced into the environment, acid-way runoff can pollute waterways, depleting the oxygen content of streams and rivers as it decomposes. And then we can go back to 3. To address this problem, right, or to address the problem that they're talking about, farmers have found a number of uses for acid-way, and then that's where it goes into the rest of the paragraph. Does this make sense for anyone? For everyone? Any questions on this before I go through the next page of questions? Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and flip the page. If someone has questions, I could always flip back. Any questions on 6 through 9? 6 and 9, cool. About 7 and 8. Okay, I'll start with 6. Let me know if any other questions pop up. So 6, the writer is considering deleting the underlined sentence. Should the writer do this? Okay, well, let's look at 6. Though these conservation methods can be costly and time-consuming, they are well worth the effort. So just right off the bat, this first topic sentence is going to be about how even though it's difficult to produce the yogurt or it's difficult for the environment, it's going to be worth it in the end. So right after this sentence, that's kind of a trigger for us to think, okay, well, they're probably going to start talking about the good aspects, the positive aspects of Greek yogurt. And then we'll just go into the next sentence just to see how it flows. Nutritionists consider Greek yogurt to be a healthy food. It is an excellent source of calcium and protein, serves to be a digestive aid, and it contains few calories in its unsweetened, low and non-fat forms. So let's just look at the answer choices for 6. Yes, it should be deleted because it does not provide a transition from the previous paragraph. That is incorrect because it recognizes that the conservation methods are difficult to achieve. However, on the flip side, it's worth it because here are the following positive aspects about Greek yogurt. So that actually works as a good transition. Yes, it should be deleted because it fails to support the main argument of the passage as introduced in the first paragraph. Let's just look at the first paragraph really quick if this doesn't lag too much. Ooh, it looks so weird when it skips. Okay, Greek yogurt, a strange form of cultured yogurt, has grown enormously in popularity in the United States since it was first introduced in the country in the late 1980s. Well, okay, if we're listing the positive aspects of Greek yogurt, it probably supports the idea, or it probably explains a little bit more why it's so popular in the first place. So that would actually not be, choosing B would not be correct for that reason. And then letter C, no, because it continues the explanation of how acid waste can be disposed of safely. That's not even what the paragraph is about. So it just leaves D because it sets up the argument in the paragraph for the benefits of Greek yogurt, and that's why we keep it. So yes, it's a strong topic sentence. That's why it should be there. If there's no problems with 8 or with 7 and 8, I'll go on to 9. So, okay. The last sentence, also, because it is more concentrated, Greek yogurt contains slightly more protein per serving, thereby helping people stay, let's see, satiated for longer periods of time. Let's look at 9. Let's look at the sentence before it to see what kind of flow there's going to be in the paragraph. Because remember, the flow needs to be natural. It needs to be cohesive. SAT will not want anything to sound choppy or irrelevant. So where does the last sentence start? Nutritionists consider Greek yogurt to be a healthy food. It is an excellent source of calcium protein. We already read that. So all the good things about Greek yogurt. Greek yogurt is slightly lower in sugar and carbohydrates than conventional yogurt is. Also, because it is more concentrated, Greek yogurt contains slightly more protein per serving, thereby helping people. So we don't even need to finish the rest of the sentence to realize that also is adding another detail for why Greek yogurt is well worth these conservation methods. So that's why, in other words, therefore, for instance, they don't work as well because also is signaling that there's yet another reason why why these conservation methods can be costly and time consuming. Does this make sense? Anybody need any more clarification for 6 through 9? Okay. About 10 and 11. Don't be shy. Go ahead and drop it. Both? Okay. Okay, so this is a vocab. Number 10 is obviously going to be a vocab kind of question. Let's just look at the beginning of how it starts, which is there we go, which is the sentence we've been working on in the last question. Also, because it is more concentrated, Greek yogurt contains slightly more protein per serving, thereby helping people stay satiated for longer periods of time. Okay, that's a tricky word, right? So let's go ahead and use context clues to figure out what they're saying. So because it has more protein, it is likely that Greek yogurt helps you stay full or nourished before getting hungry again. That's what this sentence is hinting at. So let's look at the answer choices. Fulfilled, that's not going to work because fulfilled is more of like a spiritual fulfillment. It's not filling your belly, it's making you feel whole. And so that's not the right context for physically eating something. Complacent doesn't really make sense because that just means that the person just is indifferent, is okay with what's going on. That has nothing to do with how it helps them stay full in the long run. And then sufficient, that just doesn't really make sense. Stay sufficient for longer periods of time because sufficient is meant to measure things, not to describe someone unless it's like a skill or something like that. So hopefully that makes sense. Even if you don't understand the word, if you understand the answer choices below, B through D, then hopefully you'd be able to kind of cross out certain words that don't really make sense and then narrow it down to no change. Okay, so number 11. So it looks like this is a grammar problem. Because consumers reap the nutritional benefits of Greek yogurt and support those who make and sell it, therefore farmers and businesses should continue finding safe and effective methods of producing the food. Okay, so we can look at this sentence. It starts with because. That's why we don't need a second word because it's the same thing, but they're just synonyms. We don't need this second because or therefore in the sentence. So it doesn't flow. It doesn't really make sense. You can't really have because twice. So I would just recommend just substituting the answer choices into the actual underlined portion and seeing what makes the most sense. If you look at the answer choices, you see that in C, you also have the word so. That is another way of saying because or therefore, and if it's not correct with that form, it's not going to be correct with so either. And then the colon right here. Normally, when you have a colon, it is to signal that you have a list to follow, that you're listing things, that you have multiple items that you want to talk about after. In this sentence, we don't really have a list. These are ways that we can quickly just take out these answer choices and you're left with B if you are unable to figure out why it doesn't totally make sense, why it doesn't flow. But this is the only question that's grammatically correct. It doesn't have any redundancy in the words. Does that make sense? Okay. Any questions on number 12? Twelve was easy, even though they just kind of stuck a graph in there. Okay. 13 through 16, any questions? 13, 14. Okay, great. I'll get started. Let me know if 15 and 16 need some explaining. Okay, which choice most effectively combines the two sentences at the underlined portion? So the underlined portion, obviously, it is where one sentence ends and the next one begins. So we're going to find a way to combine both sentences for it to make the most sense, just so that it's a little bit fancier, I guess. Typically, the ice sheets begin to show evidence of thawing in late summer. This follows several weeks of higher temperatures. So these sentences are really short. There's nothing wrong with them. It's when you have really choppy sentences that have similar ideas and can be linked together, it just flows better. So let's look at the options. We have A, summer, comma, following. We have summer, comma, and this thawing follows. Summer, comma, and such thawing follows. And summer, and this evidence follows. Okay, so one of those things where I would just try substituting the answer choice into the underlined portion and seeing if it makes sense. So let's see. The ice sheets begin to show evidence of thawing in the late summer. I'm going to use B. And this thawing follows several weeks of higher temperatures. One clue that you can kind of narrow down your answers for. Okay, so let's look at the answer choice B. It has the word thawing. In the actual text, you also have the word thawing. So in good writing, I mean, it's not that it's incorrect, but in good academic writing, you don't want the same word twice in the same sentence. So just from that, we can just cross it out. Okay, let's try the next one. The ice sheets begin to show evidence of thawing in late summer, and such thawing follows. Same exact thing. We're not going to want the same exact word in the sentence a second time because that's just not elevated academic writing. And then let's look at the last one. The ice sheets begin to show evidence of thawing in the late summer, and this evidence follows. Same kind of deal here. It's too redundant. SAT, just academic writing in English, follows this rule. If you can cut it down, then cut it down. There should be no reason to keep saying the same thing over and over again. And if I'm not mistaken, that isn't as strict of a rule in Portuguese writing. You can correct me if that is incorrect. I don't know how to write in Portuguese very well. So that leaves A as the correct answer. Okay, and 14. For example, in the summer of 2012, virtually the entire Greenland ice sheet underwent thawing at or near its surface by mid-July, the earliest date on record. Okay, well, let's look at the context clues. The key here is that it states mid-July. When the first sentence, because remember, these ideas have to flow. The first sentence, I'm going to just read out loud the original, even though we already figured out a way to elevate the first two sentences. Typically, the ice sheets begin to show evidence of thawing in late summer. We don't even have to read the second sentence. Dun, dun, dun. So late summer, does that line up with mid-July in the Northern Hemisphere? No, because mid-July is pretty much only a few weeks into summer. So those clues already don't line up, so that just by looking at your answer choices, you're going to know that you're going to be looking for a contradictive transition word because the evidence does not line up logically in that way. Does that make sense? Any more explanation on 13, 14, 15, or 16? Okay, moving on. 17 through 20. Any questions? Okay. Anyone miss 18? Okay, I'll start with 17. Pop it in the chat, and we'll go over 18 if needed. Okay, so according to Box, a leading Greenland expert, tundra fires in 2012 from as far away as North America produced great amounts of soot. Some of it drifted over Greenland in giant plumes of smoke and then fell as particles onto the ice sheet. Okay, so let's look at the answer choices. Same rule, B is not going to be correct because we see that soot is used right here. Just very redundant, especially because it already appeared once in the sentence prior, or in the section of the sentence right before. That's probably when you would know that you would use a reference word. So something that is referring to soot without actually using the word soot. Let's look at C, of which tundra fires in 2012 from as far away as North America produced great amounts of soot, some of which drifted over Greenland in giant plumes of smoke. Okay, see that makes sense because the which is referring to the soot. Let's pretend like it's not there, like we deleted it. Tundra fires in 2012 from as far away as North America produced great amounts of soot. Some drifted over Greenland in giant plumes of smoke. So, I mean, if this is kind of a longer sentence, it would just make a little bit more sense to have a reference word, especially since there's a transition of ideas between the production of soot and how it drifts over to Greenland in giant plumes. So those two ideas make sense as independent sentences on its own, but because we're bridging it together, it makes more sense to have some sort of reference word just to make it flow a little bit better. And the no change, let's see, tundra fires in 2012 from as far away as North America produced great amounts of soot. Some of it drifted over Greenland in giant plumes of smoke. So this one, I don't even know how to explain this one very well. It just doesn't make as much sense as some of which. Although the it is here to refer to the soot, you want to use more indirect kind of inference word, which, to make the sentence flow a little bit more. Let me know if that wasn't a very good explanation. I will try harder. But that is how we would narrow down this kind of question. Let's move on to 19. 19 is just easy grammar. Scientists have long known that soot particles facilitate melting by darkening snow and ice, limiting its ability to reflect the sun's rays. So first of all, this kind of it is used to refer, oh, that was really bad writing. Refer to it is, which wouldn't make sense once you expand that a little bit. So let's see this is another reference question. What is this word trying to refer to? Scientists have long known that soot particles facilitate melting by darkening snow and ice, limiting blank ability to reflect the sun's rays. Okay, well, what reflects the sun's rays? Snow and ice reflect the sun's rays. So from reading this sentence and trying to make sense of what it's trying to say, we can see that it is referring to two things instead of one. So we're looking at a plural option. That's how we can rule out B. C, there. That's not even correctly spelled. That is there as in pointing to a location. So that one isn't even the kind of reference word we're looking for. And then D, because it's plural and it's spelled correctly and because it's referring to snow and ice. Okay, 20. Which choice best completes the description of a self-reinforcing cycle? Okay, this one is pretty tricky. We are going to start with the sentence that's on this line. The result is a self-reinforcing cycle. As the ice melts, the land and water under the ice become exposed, and since land and water are darker than snow, the surface absorbs even more heat, which is related to the rising temperatures. Okay, this technically makes sense, but because this sentence right here is hinting that we're going to be talking about a reinforcing cycle, let's look at the first thing that it mentions as the ice melts. Well, cycles, things happen more than one time, correct? It goes back to how it begins. So let's look at the answer choices. D makes the most sense because it starts by describing as the ice melts. And so the last part, if it is a cycle, it should end as the process began. So D leads to additional melting. That is the only option that would complete this idea that it is a self-reinforcing cycle, because again, you want to make sure that logically it's going to make sense. Whatever it starts with, it's going to end with as well. Whereas the answer or the current sentence that's there, it doesn't not make sense. It's just not the best answer for what they're asking for. Any questions on these, or on 17 through 20? Okay. 21, 22. Okay. Let me know if you change your mind. 23, 24, okay, 22. I'll wait for it to change. To make this paragraph most logical, sentence 4 should be placed, where's sentence 4? Here, after sentence 5. Okay, so we're gonna read the sentence before it and the sentence after 5. The pattern box observed in 2012 may repeat itself again with harmful effects on the Arctic ecosystem. Box is currently organizing an expedition to gather this crucial information. The next step for Box and his team is to travel to Greenland to perform direct sampling of the ice in order to determine just how much the soot is contributing to the melting of the ice sheets. Members of the public will be able to track his team's progress and even help fund the expedition through a website Box created. So this is asking about the logic of organizing this particular part of this paragraph. So let's see. Next step. Okay, so here, let's look at sentence 5, the next step for Box and his team, blah, 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 blah. The next step is introducing the idea of going on this trip, okay? If we were to take out question 4, it would work out very smoothly to just transition from the pattern that Box observes with harmful effects on the Arctic ecosystem. So the next step to observing this phenomenon is to travel to Greenland to perform direct sampling of the ice to kind of figure out what's going on, right? So let's look at sentence 4 as well. It gives us a hint. This crucial information. Well, what is this crucial information referring to? It makes most sense to assume that this crucial information is referring to the information he extracts from sampling the ice. So he samples the ice in order to determine just how much the soot is contributing to the melting of the ice sheet. So this is what he's going for. This is why he's traveling to Greenland. This is the information he's going to need to collect in order to understand better this phenomenon, this melting, this soot carrying over. So that's why 4 would actually make sense after, because 5 provides the kind of information that he wants to collect in introducing the idea that going to Greenland is possible for this project. And then 4 provides a little bit more context, or it just explains it a little bit further. So this is the next step. Fox is currently already organizing this to happen. So just a little bit, it just sounds a little bit more fleshed out and a little bit more organized in this way. Any questions on that? Okay. 23, 24, 25. Okay, I'm going to flip the page. Oh, 24. All right, so we're getting towards, oh, this is a new passage. Okay, so 24, let's start at the beginning where this sentence starts right here. Having become frustrated trying to solve difficult problems, no colleagues were nearby to share ideas. So one thing about proper English that is, I think it's important to internalize, especially because it's not super shared with other language, is when it is most proper to use this kind of structure. So instead of using a passive voice, this is called active voice. I missed having colleagues nearby to consult. And I'm just going to compare it with the option that's already in the text, just so that you guys can see the difference. Having become frustrated trying to solve difficult problems, no colleagues were nearby to share ideas. Passive voice is when you don't have a clear subject doing an action. So no colleagues were nearby to share ideas. That's kind of passive. A more active thing would be no colleagues shared their ideas with me. So you would have the subject followed by the verb because they're actively doing the action, blah, 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 blah. So just looking at 24, I think this is a really important clue that will help you go through this test faster, is by eliminating passive voice, because ultimately it is not good English writing, or it's just not elevated. Again, it's one of those things that makes sense, but it is not what they're looking for. They want you to make it sound a little bit more academic. So colleagues were important for sharing ideas. Ideas couldn't be shared with colleagues. I missed having colleagues nearby to consult. So these are all saying the same thing, which is another reason why I think this clue of active voice, let me know if this is not making enough sense. So this is another clue why knowing these little differences between sentences makes a huge difference in finding the correct answer, because this is the only answer option where the subject, I, directly does something. I missed this, like a person, here, in here. Colleagues were important for sharing ideas. That's just describing why colleagues are important. It's not really describing, or it's not really doing anything as active. C, ideas couldn't be shared with colleagues. It would make even more sense to say I couldn't share ideas with colleagues, because again, this is just a little bit more descriptive. You want something a little bit more direct, and active voice is a little bit firmer, I would say, than passive voice. Did we focus on the active voice then, right? I would say that in any setting where you need to edit your writing, or you are turning in a paper, or you're reading something, the essays that stand out most are the ones that sound the most confident, which active voice does for your paper. So again, that's not something that is shared with a lot of writing in other languages, but in English, it is considered bad writing for academic purposes to use passive voice, if that makes sense. I know that's really common in English for science experiments, for example, but for argumentative papers like this, you're supposed to have the opinion. You're supposed to share your thoughts in an assertive way. And it just doesn't come across as strong in passive voice. And so just knowing that rule, hopefully, will help you narrow down certain questions where they all seem correct, but what is the correct way to, or what is the most correct way to say something? What is the most assertive? What makes sense for this argumentative paper? Okay, we have no questions on 25. We're nearing the last stretch. Let's look at 26 through 28. 26, okay. I'll start with this one. 27, okay. The spaces are usually stocked with standard office equipment, such as photocopiers, printers, and fax machines. So just looking at the answer choices, it looks like it's listing something, right? However, because you have the such as here, oops, sorry, I can't write with this thing. This is difficult. So because you have the such as here, it's kind of like it is the same thing as a colon, but in words. Okay, so if you were to take the such as out, then you would need some sort of grammatical device to make this sentence make a little bit more sense. However, because you have the such as, you actually don't need something as strong as a colon, because it's pretty much describing a colon, but in words, such as this and this and this and this example. That's why if we look at our answer choices, we can cross out B, we can cross out C, just because it's a little redundant, just having this grammatical device as well as a such as, just doing the same thing twice. We always want to stay away from that. And then the last answer choice, it adds an extra comma. That actually doesn't need to be there. Such as doesn't warrant, it doesn't need any punctuation following it to make the list that follows it make sense. So just knowing that will help you narrow down any extra grammatical, what did I do? Grammatical things that would otherwise not really, that are unnecessary or unneeded, because again, we're always looking for something that is concise. Okay, let's see. 27. In these locations, however, the spaces often include small meeting areas and larger rooms for hosting presentations. Well, let's look at the key words here. Let's look at however. That is always actually to signal that we are contradicting a statement, changing ideas. That is your signal. That is your transition word. Let's look at the sentence. Let's look at the sentence before it, just to get an idea of what exactly it's talking about. It's the sentence that we just worked with. The spaces are usually stocked with standard office equipment such as photocopiers, printers, and fax machines. In these locations, however, the spaces often include small meeting areas and larger rooms for hosting presentations. The bit about hosting small meeting, or the small meeting areas and larger rooms for hosting presentations, does not contradict having photocopiers, printers, and fax machines. In fact, you could have both. So let's look at 27. For these reasons, likewise, and then the correct answer in addition to equipment. So for these reasons would signal that you had reasons before listed, and then you're transitioning, okay, because I listed this, it makes sense that X happens. However, we're not following this kind of, we don't have like a logical progression of an argument here. This is purely just a list of what is available in the space. So we can just cross that one out because it doesn't really make sense. Likewise, so likewise, the spaces often include small meeting areas and larger rooms for hosting presentation. Likewise is to compare something. So this would make more sense if you were to say, we were to be talking about a different space in a different building even, that also had meeting areas and presentation rooms or whatever. Likewise would be to signal, okay, like what I just talked about, this also exists in this other space. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're just adding to the list of what this space already has. So that's why, in addition to equipment, makes the most sense, because you're not comparing anything, you're not arguing anything, you're simply just providing information for what these co-working spaces look like. So then that's how you follow the logical flow of the passage. That makes sense. We need help with 28 before we move on to the last few ones. Okay. 29, 30. Any questions? Okay, so these ones are pretty tricky. At this point, the writer wants to add specific information that supports the main topic of the paragraph. Well, let's look at, oh, that's fine, okay. Let's look at the paragraph. What most caught my interest, though, was a quotation from someone who described co-working spaces as melting pots of creativity. I'm going to underline that because since that's the topic sentence of the paragraph, all of the information that's following has to be relevant to that topic sentence. The article refers to a 2012 survey in which 64% of respondents noted that co-working spaces prevented them from completing tasks in a given time. The article goes on to suggest that the most valuable resources provided by co-working spaces are actually the people whom use them. Okay, well, let's look at 29, or let's look at the sentence next to the number 29. So it says that people noted that co-working spaces prevented them from being able to complete tasks. So basically, having other people around you distracts you, and so you're unable to be as productive. Well, does that have anything to do with creativity, a melting pot of creativity? Not really. So that's why we can rule this one out, and it's not supporting our topic sentence at all. So that's goodbye, no change. Let's look at C. Respondents credited co-working spaces with giving them 74% of their ideas relating to business. Does that have anything to do with creativity? Again, not really. Cross that one out. Respondents revealed that their ability to focus on their work improved by 12% in a co-working space. This has to do with, this actually has more to do with the original sentence than what the question is asking. So if the whole paragraph were about needing to focus, getting rid of distractions, this would fit better, but it's not. It's about fostering more creativity. Not only that, but when you get your creativity together and you share ideas with other people, you're assuming, or just from reading that you're going to have better results after. You're going to be more productive. You're going to have a positive result from working together in creative spaces. So these are actually trying to introduce the opposite, that these are preventing productivity and encouraging distraction, actually. So we're going to mark that one as incorrect as well. 71% of respondents indicated that using a co-working space increased the creativity. Thank you. Look at this key phrase here. That is the only option that has the most to do with the topic sentence of the paragraph. So again, like these are the kind of questions that you can substitute back into the paragraph for it to make a little bit more sense for you to read over at the end. And then 30, whom used them? Whom is used to address someone. It is passive. It is not it's not an active I don't know the term of the actual grammar term in English, but anyway, whenever we see, here's your clue. Whenever you see a verb, oh, I just covered it. Let's just underline it. Whenever we see a verb, we know that the subject before it has to be a direct person, it has to be I, it has to be he, it can't be him, it can't be her, it has to be she. So the difference between those pronouns are key. And so this is the same thing. When you use who, it is always, always, always followed by a verb because it is a direct action. Whom is when you describe something, to whom this may concern. To whom is this envelope addressed? Do you see how it's a little bit, it looks the same. I know this one is a little bit trickier than other pronouns, but the difference is how it's being used. Hopefully that makes sense. If we have no doubts, we're going to finish up the last few. 31, 32, 33. Any questions, clarifications? Okay, let's start with 31. The writer wants to add the following sentence to the paragraph. After filling out a simple registration form and taking a quick tour of the facility, I took a seat at the table and got to work on my laptop. Okay, let's read the paragraph. Thus, even though I already had all the equipment I needed in my home office, I decided to try using a co-working space in my city because I was specifically interested in co-working's reported benefits related to creativity. I chose a facility that offered a bright, open work area where I wouldn't be isolated. So here is where it'd make most sense to put this sentence because the sentence right after, throughout the morning, more people appeared. You know that the narrator is already there. He already arrived. He or she already arrived. So this sentence right here fills in that gap for us. It describes that the narrator had to fill out a registration form, took a tour of the facility, took a seat, and got to work on their laptop. So throughout the morning, as they were already working, more people appeared. Periods of quiet during which everyone worked independently were broken up occasionally with lively conversation. So it just fills in that little gap that wasn't provided before. Let me know if you need me to explain that a little bit further. I know we're nearing the end, and so I want to get you guys out in time. No one needs help with 32, so I'm going to move on to 33. Unless you change your mind, let me know. 33. Even those of us who work in disparate fields are able to share advice and help each other brainstorm. Okay, so I see. So this one is one of those questions where all of them are technically right. However, we need to go for the most precise answer without making it sound too wordy and making it sound appropriate for the register and the tone of this passage, which is pretty informal compared to the other ones that we were reading. Not that it's not academic writing, but it's a little bit more personal. They use the word I. It's a little bit, maybe they wrote this down in a journal or something like that. It's not super informal, but just to keep in mind the register. So let's look through the options. We have no change, which is share advice. Give some wisdom. Same exact thing as share advice. It's just a little bit wordier. Proclaim our opinions. This sounds a little bit too formal for the passage that we're given. It sounds a little bit like Old English, like the Queen of England is talking or something like that. So not really, it doesn't really fit with how this passage plays out. To opine. This is just an oddball word. I don't like it. You rarely see it. So if this is like an odd word that you might see like every so often in old text or super fancy text, whatever, doesn't really fit in with what we're working with here. So that's why share advice is the best option, because it is the most direct. Again, give some wisdom, also makes sense. But if you can take out words, then chances are it's going to be the most precise option. Always, always, always with SAT. Less, as long as it makes sense and accurate, less is better. So that's why we would stick with no change, because it fits the register of the passage. It's not too fancy. It's not too informal, and because it is concise and to the point. Does anyone? I believe that's the last. Yeah. So I know that was long, but I hope that working through it made you kind of realize, oh, well, if I just paid attention to this more, I could do better on it next time. I feel like that was typically my issue if I didn't understand the concept, is just making sure that I looked for key things as I was taking the test. Before I just open it up to final thoughts and any last questions, I just want to remind you guys that we have another session on Thursday, the 23rd, at the same time at, I think it's 6 p.m. in Brazil. I'm currently in Chicago, so the time difference is different. So if today started at 6, then it'll be at 6. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, will all the meetings be like this? Yes. So I will always, at least for the 4 sections, we only did part of the reading section. On Thursday, I'm actually going to give you the math. I don't remember if it's with a calculator, without a calculator. You don't need the calculator to finish the calculator portion. However, it's helpful. It'll just make it go faster, and it does not have to be fancy. I'm not going to check if you're using your phone calculator, but just have one just in case, because I cannot remember if it is the no calculator or with calculator. So that'll be, every session is going to be like this. I go over tips to finish this section in the appropriate amount of time. I will give you around a half hour, give or take a few minutes, to do a section like this. I just kind of chill here and make sure I'm not going to give you the wrong answers. And then afterwards, we'll go through sections like this, and then go through any questions that you might have problems with. And I know some people don't need as much help as others, and that's awesome. So sorry you have to listen to me talk for this long, but hopefully if this was your first time, it gave you a good overview of what the SAT looks like, because this is actually taken from the College Board website. This was either a past test or a practice test made specifically for practicing, obviously. I can send you the link. I had it on the slide from before. Okay, just kidding. I don't have the link on me. You could always email me if you have any questions. If you need the link sooner than Thursday, then I can send it to you there. So yeah, I'm going to stick around for a few more minutes. You're free to go. If you have any clarifying questions, feel free to stick around, give me suggestions for how to do better. I know I can talk pretty fast sometimes. I forget. So yeah, thank you guys so much. I will hopefully see you Thursday with math. And then the essay section at the very end is going to be structured a little bit differently, but I'll give you tons of time to prepare. So have a great rest of your night, guys. I will see you. I'm from California, but I am living in Chicago for college at the moment. Cool. Thank you, guys. No worries. I will be around for the next few minutes. Okay, to be honest, I don't remember my SAT score. I know it was in the higher range. I took it around 4 years ago, and I actually cannot remember. I'm sorry for that really disappointing answer, but it was good enough to get me into college, which is what I needed. Well, thanks, guys. I'll stick around for a few minutes. Thank you for your patience learning how to do this virtually. I am majoring in something called global studies. That sounds really broad, but I'm focusing on Latin America, specifically Brazil. And also I study Romance languages. And so mainly Spanish, which I speak fluently, and then Portuguese, which Simone will tell you I speak fluently. That's not true. I speak it proficiently, but I can understand all of it. Thanks, guys, for coming. Let me know if you have any. I said I don't remember my SAT score. I took it around 4 years ago. Sorry for the disappointing answer, but it wasn't bad. It got me into school, but I do not remember the actual number. That was kind of a lame response, but no worries. I'll just stick around for a few more minutes. Feel free to unmute your mics. I feel like I've been talking to myself the whole time.
Hi, Noelani. I don't know how to say your name. Sorry.
That was great.
I just want to say, like, I know how difficult it is to do this kind of thing. Like, I do this. I have to do workshops to people, and they don't, or I don't know, they don't show their faces. So I know how hard it is. So I just want to say that you was perfect. I love it. It's the first time that I did the SAT. I am really a beginner in this world of applications to universities. So it was awesome. Just want to thank you. Great.
I appreciate that. If you guys have any ways, any suggestions for me to do better, because this will be the structure for the next 3 sessions, I'm always open to ideas because I want this to be helpful for you guys. I hope that this was a good introduction. Even if you're just starting, I hope that it gave you a little bit at least the confidence to be able to sit down at home, download these tests, and practice it on yourself. And that is the main goal. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. I see a comment in the chat. Do you have any tips for UChicago applicants, what they may look for? So I can't even think of any of the immediate seminars we have coming up because we do have a panel next week. I'd have to ask Simone to remember when it is, July 30th, talking about college experience for undergraduates. Like I mentioned in the beginning, I'm going to be a senior in college starting in September. But my school, UChicago, and other schools always look at holistic things. And so I wasn't personally the best test taker. I had to work really, really hard to get the scores that I got, and it still wasn't as high as I wanted them to be. But they also consider your extracurriculars, your essays. I think essays are the most important part. I will be hosting an essay workshop at some point. I don't have the date yet. So just try to stay up to date with all of the activities that we have. And you will get small tastes of what each part of your application should look like, or how you can come across as a really strong applicant in your essays, your extracurriculars, all the parts of the application that you need to submit. I know that was a pretty broad answer, but really just make sure that, I guess this sounds cliche, but it's true. Make sure that you're being super honest in your application about who you are and your passions and your interests. I think it's so much easier to write essays and to be able to fill out applications when you're doing it for yourself and to make the application readers know who you are, because that's how you're going to stand out. So I don't think there's any shame in trying to be very authentic in your applications, because that's what they want to see. They want to see what you're truly into, what gets you excited about life, and all that stuff. So feel free to email me any questions. I will be happy to answer anything related to college applications. I went through the entire process, so I understand your guys' pain, although I did it in my first language, so it's definitely not as bad. So always open to emails, whatever it may be. Any last questions before I close the session? Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming. I hope to see you Thursday, if not the following Tuesday, when we'll be doing a different reading or different part of the reading section. So yeah, I will see you Thursday. Let me know if you have any questions. But until then, guys, have a good night. Bye.